Hi all, welcome back to Bosco Campus Vision. In the previous session, we have discussed Act 1, Scene 1 of Hamlet, where the ghost of the late King Hamlet is making an appearance, and Horatio and the other night guards are trying to make a conversation with the ghost, but the ghost looks offended and moves away, moves out of sight, and then again the ghost is making a reappearance. And again, Horatio is trying to have a conversation, and at the exact time, the cock crows and the ghost moves back, or it goes back to wherever it came from. So they are not able to have a conversation with the ghost. And then they plan to speak about this matter, about the appearance of the ghost of late King Hamlet to the young Hamlet, in the belief that the ghost would definitely speak to Hamlet. So that was the end of scene 1 of Act 1. Now let's move on to scene 2 of Act 1. In Act 1, scene 2, messengers are being sent to the King of Norway. Let's have a detailed look of the summary. This scene opens in a room of state in the castle. Enter the king, the queen, Hamlet, Polonius, Laertes, and others. So the second scene opens in a room of affairs in the castle and enters the king, queen Gertrude. We have Hamlet, Polonius. Polonius is King Claudius's Lord Chamberlain. Then we have Laertes. Laertes is Polonius's son, and some other courtiers. The king speaks of his marriage to the widowed queen. The marriage, he says, fills his heart with gladness and grief at once, because the memory of the late king is still fresh in their minds. So at this instance, the king, Claudius, is speaking about his marriage to Gertrude, and he says that he cannot feel completely happy, as well as he is not really gloomy, because he is happy about the marriage. It is a good thing that has happened, and he is sad that he has lost his brother. So the people of Denmark are mourning the late King Hamlet. So he is struck with gladness and grief at once. He then refers to the threat of aggression that Denmark faces from young Fortinbras, who has demanded the return of the territory that young Fortinbras's father lost to the late King of Denmark. So then Claudius is pointing out a potential threat from young Fortinbras, because he is trying to claim the throne of Denmark. Going through the history of Denmark, we know that late King Hamlet had murdered the then king of Denmark, that is Fortinbras's father, and claimed the throne for himself. So now King Hamlet is dead. So Fortinbras is plotting plans to reclaim the throne of Denmark. He entrusts two courtiers, Cornelius and Voltimand, with the duty of carrying a dispatch from him to the King of Norway, who will be asked to restrain his nephew from embarking upon his reckless adventure. The courtiers depart. So, having this issue in mind, King Claudius is sending two courtiers called Cornelius and Voltimand to Norway, to the King of Norway, with a letter that contains an information for King of Norway, that is to restrain his nephew and restrain young Fortinbras from embarking upon his reckless adventure. So, to restrain his nephew from plotting plans against Denmark. And the courtiers depart with the letter. The king turns to Laertes, who seeks the king's permission to return to France. He had come to attend the coronation of Claudius. The king asks Polonius about his decision and grants the request of Laertes. After the courtiers depart, the king then turns to Laertes. Laertes is Polonius' son, and Laertes seeks the king's permission to return to France, and he had come to Denmark only to attend the coronation of King Claudius. So he is now seeking permission to move back to France. The king at this instance asks Polonius, Laertes' father, about his opinion in this matter, and he says that Polonius had already given permission for him to go to France, and so the king also grants the request of Laertes. Then Hamlet is being questioned by the king and the queen. The king now speaks to Hamlet and asks why Hamlet is still depressed. The king seems to be really concerned about Hamlet, and he is speaking to Hamlet and asks why he is still depressed. The queen urges Hamlet to cast off his melancholy because all human beings must die, and because Hamlet's father too was to die one day. So the queen is asking Hamlet to get over his emotions, get over his depression, get over his melancholy, because all human beings are destined to die at some point of time, and we really do not have a say in the matter. So Hamlet's father was to die one day, so he should get over his emotions. Hamlet speaks of the grief that is oppressing him, but his manner of speaking to the king and the queen is bitter and sarcastic. So Hamlet is speaking openly about his grief, and even though he is being open about it, he is contemptful to the king and the queen. He is bitter and sarcastic in his tone. We have to consider that at this point of time, Hamlet is really not aware of the fact that it was King Claudius that had killed Hamlet's father. Even though he doesn't know that fact, he is still being bitter and sarcastic towards the king and the queen, because a gut in him says that something is not all right, and definitely he is grieving for his late father. The king praises Hamlet for his dutiful grief over his father's death, but urges him not to persist in his grief. So the king Claudius, who's obviously good with words, is praising Hamlet for being a good son, for doing the duty to his father, that is, to mourn for the death of his father. He is doing his duties correctly, but he also prompts him not to persist in his grief. So he should not continue in the grief. He should not be depressed. He should get over it. He further urges Hamlet to look upon him as a father and offers to Hamlet all the love that a father can feel for his son. So he is asking Hamlet to get over his grief, get over his lament, and also prompts him to look upon Claudius, the king, as his own father, and offers to Hamlet all the love that a father can feel for his son. So he promises Hamlet that he will be a father to him, so he should get over his grief. He also disapproves of Hamlet's intention to go back to the University of Wittenberg to resume his interrupted studies, and wants him to stay on here as his chiefest courtier, cousin, and son. Hamlet cannot really adjust with the current situation. He is upset about the whole atmosphere in the castle, and he wants to go back to the University of Wittenberg so that he can continue with his studies. But Claudius is disapproving of his intention and asks him to stay here, stay in the castle as his chiefest courtier, cousin, and son. Look at the roles that are designed for Hamlet by Claudius, his chiefest courtier, cousin, and son. The queen joins the king in this advice to Hamlet, and he replies that he will obey her. So the queen is also asking the same request, and Hamlet, to her request, says that he will obey her. The king expresses his joy at his reply and retires with the queen and the others except Hamlet, who is left alone. So the king seems all happy with his decision, with Hamlet's decision to stay back. and uh, the king, queen, and all the other courtiers leave the scene, and Hamlet is left alone. Hamlet is grieving at his mother's remarriage. In a soliloquy, Hamlet speaks of death and suicide. See, there are seven soliloquies of Hamlet altogether in the drama, placed at different scenes. And the first soliloquy comes up in Act 1, Scene 2. And in this soliloquy, Hamlet speaks of death and suicide. The world seems to him very stale, flat, and unprofitable. So Hamlet has lost his will to live, and the world seems to him of no use. It is tiring, stale, flat, and unprofitable. He deplores the fact that his mother has remarried barely 2 months after the death of her husband, who was an excellent king, and the present king is nothing as compared to him. So Hamlet is condemning the fact that, or he is spiteful of the fact that his mother has remarried, and note at least 2 months have passed after the death of King Hamlet. And then he is making a comparison between King Hamlet and King Claudius. King Hamlet, he was an excellent king, and the present king is nothing as compared to him. Then Hamlet goes on to make a general statement about every woman based on this atrocious act of Gertrude. He calls her as frailty, thy name is woman. So, with this act of Gertrude, this hasty marriage of Gertrude with his uncle Claudius, he is coming to the conclusion that women are weak, they are inferior, they are meek, they do not have a voice. So, he is coming to these assumptions, and he says that frailty, thy name is woman. He is making a generalized statement. Even a beast would have mourned for a longer period than his mother has done. He looks at the remarriage of Gertrude with contempt, and he says that even if it were a beast, it would have mourned a bit longer than his own mother. He strongly condemns this hasty and incestuous marriage. So he considers the marriage of Claudius and Gertrude as something out of lust and not of love, and he is condemning their marriage. After the soliloquy, Hamlet is being informed about the appearance of ghost. So Horatio, Marcellus, and Bernardo arrive and tell Hamlet what they have seen during the night and what Marcellus and Bernardo had seen during the two previous nights. Horatio, Hamlet's university friend, and the night guards come to the scene and they report to Hamlet about the ghost, about the appearance of ghost of late King Hamlet. Hamlet is surprised and perplexed by what he is told and tells them that he would visit the spot at night during the hours of 11 and 12 to meet the ghost if it appears again. Hamlet is at once shocked and also confused by this report, and he tells them that he would definitely come to the spot at midnight so that he could also meet the ghost of late King Hamlet. In a brief soliloquy, Hamlet expresses his apprehension that if his father's ghost appeared in a warlike garb, all is not well. This assumption was already made by Horatio and the night guards in scene 1 of Act 1, where they said that something is clearly wrong in the state of Denmark. Something is evil, something evil is overshadowing Denmark. And Hamlet also has the same view, since the ghost of late King Hamlet appeared wearing a war-like dress. Something is not right in Denmark. This is a summary of scene 2 of Act 1. Now let's move on to the critical analysis. Hamlet's character is revealed through this scene. This scene supplies some vital information regarding the marriage of Hamlet's widowed mother to Hamlet's uncle, who has ascended the throne of Denmark. King Claudius himself gives us a peep into this matter about the marriage of Gertrude and Claudius just after the death of King Hamlet. We here meet Hamlet, the hero of the play. So in scene 2, we meet our hero Hamlet. The two most striking qualities of his character as revealed in this scene are his melancholy and his speculative nature. So the two most important qualities of his character as in this scene are his melancholy or his sadness without any obvious cause, and his speculative nature, his tentative nature. His melancholy has been noticed by the king and the queen. So, from in the scene, the melancholy side of Hamlet is noticed by both the king and the queen, and they assume that the cause of the melancholy is the death of King Hamlet, and his speculative nature appears in his two soliloquies. So his speculative nature is evident in the first soliloquy, where he is making a general assumption and making the statement that frailty, thy name is woman, and he is supposing that the marriage between Claudius and Gertrude is one out of lust. It was an incestuous marriage, according to him. So that is a speculative nature in the first soliloquy, and in the second one, we can say that it was because he is assuming that there is something bad befalling Denmark, as the ghost of late King Hamlet was wearing a warlike garb. So these are instances of his speculative nature from the two soliloquies. We also find that Hamlet has strongly resented his mother's hasty marriage with his uncle. He considers this marriage to be an incestuous relationship. We have already discussed that. Furthermore, we find that Hamlet is capable of employing bitter irony and sarcasm in his conversation. So he can easily include bitter irony and sarcasm in his conversation without much effort. It comes to him very easily. So that is the character of Hamlet as revealed in this scene. The next point up for discussion is our unfavorable impression on the king and the queen, or our unfriendly or negative impression on the king and the queen. The queen is no doubt very solicitous about the welfare of Hamlet, but the indecent haste with which she has remarried lowers her in our estimation. So there is no doubt about her love and her concern for her son Hamlet, but considering her hasty marriage to King Claudius, there is a negative impact in the minds of the readers and the audience when it comes to the character portrayal of Gertrude. As Hamlet puts it, "O God, a beast that wants discourse of reason would have mourned longer." So, as Hamlet says in his first soliloquy, a beast that does not have the ability to think would have mourned much longer than Queen Gertrude, who actually possesses the ability to think. So that was his remark. A beast that wants discourse of reason would have mourned longer. His mother's hasty remarriage makes him generalize thus: frailty, thy name is woman. As for the king, Hamlet's uncle, Hamlet speaks very contemptuously about him in his soliloquy. He compares his late father to Hyperion and his uncle to a satyr. So Hamlet is very contemptuous about his uncle Claudius, and he makes a comparison between his father and his uncle. He compares his father to a Hyperion. Hyperion is one of the Titans, that is son of Uranus and Gaia, and Hyperion represented light, wisdom, and watchfulness. So according to Hamlet, the late King Hamlet was like a mighty figure who possessed all gifts for being a king, while he considers um, Claudius as a mere satyr. And according to Greek mythology, satyr mm, is a class of lustful, drunken woodland gods. So he is comparing his father, late King Hamlet, to a Hyperion, and his uncle Claudius to a satyr. But we must note the king's courteous and even unctuous manner of speaking. So the king Claudius is courteous and unctuous. Unctuous meaning excessively flattering. So right from the first moment that we see Claudius, he is courteous as well as unctuous. So that is our negative impression on the king and the queen. Now let's have a detailed look at Hamlet's first soliloquy. We have already discussed the main points, but still, Hamlet's first soliloquy is designed to show his state of mind before his interview with the ghost. With Hamlet's first soliloquy, we are introduced into his state of mind, that is, his melancholic and his speculative nature, just before his interview with the ghost. He is profoundly shocked by Gertrude's marriage to his uncle in less than 2 months after her first husband's death, although he has no conscious suspicion that his father had been murdered by Claudius. So even without any suspicion that Claudius had murdered late King Hamlet, he is really shocked and he is perplexed by Gertrude's sudden marriage to his uncle Claudius in less than 2 months. He wishes that suicide were permissible. See, in the first soliloquy, he is speaking about death and suicide. And he wishes that suicides were made permissible. He, in the soliloquy, contrasts Gertrude's two husbands, the godlike and the bestial. That is, the godlike King Hamlet. He compares Hamlet to a Hyperion, and the bestial Claudius. And he compares Claudius to a satyr. And he, with a tendency to generalize, assumes that all women are like his mother when he makes a statement that frailty thy name is woman. So that is Hamlet's first soliloquy. And that brings us to the end of this session. As assignment, write a brief note on Hamlet's first soliloquy and comment on his character. Thank you and have a nice day.